testing my... Good morning.
Morning.
This is a great way to start the week.
Yep.
9 a.m. on a Monday morning. For me, anyway.
Yeah, 7 for me.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Yes, it's perfect.
Perfect. Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast. Today we're going to be talking about access. And I know we have touched on this subject before, but there's a little bit of a slant that I've kind of like been thinking about, and Melinda and I were chatting about recently, and that is, I'll just start by allowing my thought process to kind of unravel a little bit. There's this gap, I think, in the access that we so often forget as creatives and photographers, well, particularly photographers, because I think I was watching, I don't know whether have you seen the new series on Disney Plus, Photographer?
No, I don't know.
Have you got that, Disney Plus?
I don't have Disney Plus. And it really irks me to pay for TV.
No, well, it's actually Nat Geo, and it's a series called Photographer. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is with the couple that run Sea Legacy, Paul and Christina. And there was just something in it that triggered this thought process. And it was when Paul was talking about Christina and saying how she is one of the most amazing nature photographers in the world. And I 100% agree with him. But it was one of those kind of like, oh, hang on, ding, 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 ding. And it was that whole process of, with access, of putting yourself in the way of opportunity to be able to create, and having that time to be able to create, and having that access to be able to create. And to be fair, they get a lot of support now, but they didn't when they started.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that you necessarily have to have that initially. And it just got me thinking about this whole sense of the best, or like with awards, that sort of top level of being considered and what we allow ourselves to be judged on. And I know a lot of people talk about what does success look like to you? But actually the reality is, yes, I have this holding inside me in terms of what that success looks like to me. But yet there's this sort of external judgment of what that is. And obviously as a photographer, you have this end product, which can be essentially judged, considered, evaluated, and all those sorts of things. Whereas to be a photographer, there are, the end product, the photograph, and we have touched on this before, is actually only a small percentage of what it means to be a photographer.
Yeah.
And then this morning when I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about Vivian Maier, and how as a prolific photographer, it was almost like she was able to create the volume and be the consistent storyteller and be the observer in many ways, potentially because she wasn't acknowledged in that field. Yeah. She had that access to that time, to that individual. And to be a street photographer, a huge part of being a street photographer is to be unnoticed, to be the observer, to be the
invisible.
Yeah, to be nimble, take time to slow down, to almost be the fly on the wall.
Well, especially with the camera she used, like she was a film medium format.
Yeah.
And it's not like digital where you can just kind of fire off a few shots and hope it turns out.
The waiting, and the time, and the access to time. And that's the thing, is that, and which is sort of, I guess essentially because it's something that I have quite little of at the moment. That it just got me, and it's not like I'm saying I want to be the best in the world, blah 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 blah. But it's like, where is my frustration line?
Yeah.
Where is my, you know, the gap. By Ira Glass, he talks about the gap, and again we've touched on this before, but he talks about the gap in terms of from where you have the vision, but then you have the ability,
Yes.
and that gap.
Yes.
But this whole time thing is so key, and also just access to people, access to opportunity, access to so many things. And I shared on my Instagram the other day that I believe access can make or break a photographer.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, particularly when it changes, particularly when your circumstances change, when your physical, geographical situation changes. And I think, again, a lot of the time we lay it down on ourselves that it's actually our inability to take pictures or our inability to connect with people, to connect to our subject, to tell a story, to deliver on the final product.
Yeah.
But actually the make or break, it's very much like footfall, right? In terms of a store. You know, stores say, right, okay, well, I'm going to set up a store here, but do I have footfall? And it's like, for us, it's like, I'm going to be able to create this beautiful image, but do I have the time to consistently show up, consistently create, consistently, you know, practice my craft?
Yeah.
So anyway, so I've said a lot. I sort of sprung that on Melinda because I was like, this is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I'm really interested in hearing about this from you because you are in such a small community, but the work that you create, you shared some the other day. It was from I think it was like a winery. It was a winery, and I was just like that. They're so lucky to have you because of your level. Like you just said just before, I don't want to be the best in the world, but you are, because the photos that you're producing, that region is so lucky to have you and their access to you because of the photos that you are able to take.
Thank you.
Do you know what I mean?
No, but I do sometimes think that.
Yeah.
Not that I'm the best, but not that I'm, you know, up there, but I'm just like,
It's
actually,
like, I suppose what I'm trying to say is we get frustrated because we like, I don't feel like I have a huge access to people to take photos of.
Yeah.
But I suppose what I'm saying is it's also the opposite. Like the client, the business, the whoever we work for, I'm sure they also feel, or maybe don't even realize, the access that they need or that they have or that they don't have to incredible artists,
Mm-hmm.
to photographers, to people that can really, you know, make a difference in their business or create these incredible family photos, and it comes down to an awareness.
Yeah.
And being creative with how we view access and how we can, like my Over 40 project, I've made it remote so that I have access to the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so
but then you're compromising, and that's the thing, is I think as well, the element of access is the choice of the deliverable, the choice of the whole. So you are choosing to use a system which you might not, out of, you know, top preference, choose. So like, I love the in-person, I love the camera in my hand, I love creating, you know, maybe film even. But because you are yearning to create for more women across the world that you can't get physical access, that physical in the camera gets compromised
Yeah.
and gets not compromised, but you have to shift it and make it
It's a
another
completely
choice.
different process.
Yeah.
It's a completely different process. And I love the weight of my camera.
Yeah.
Like, I just love feeling that weight.
Yeah.
And yeah, like when I'm doing a remote shoot, I'm using my mouse. It's literally just clicking the mouse.
Yeah.
So you're still hitting the shutter,
That's so funny.
but I'm not holding my camera.
Do you feel that sense that you are taking photographs though?
Yeah, it's a completely different feeling of, I love to move when I'm taking photos. Like,
Same.
I move around a lot. And I get in close and I go back and I, move and whatever.
Yeah, the dance.
Yeah, and doing a remote, I'm literally sitting in my chair, which makes me really antsy. And I'm having to ask the other person to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has actually been very beneficial for my practice in directing.
Yeah.
And really, really being aware of, even more so of the light, because it looks completely different on a computer screen
Yeah.
than in your camera.
Yeah.
So again, that comes down to access of your own knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your creativity and how well you know how you take photos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
being tapped into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's one thing that's so powerful. I talk about it in when I mentor, and when we were running the atelier, we talked about how the or how we create our sort of internal blueprint of how we create and how we see essentially, and how we can translate that. And that's why I do my expansive art exercises, because it's not about that I want you to get messy and I want you to paint like a child, because I think that's what a lot of people are like, I just want to take photographs. And I'm like, yes, but the process of understanding what is going on up here, sometimes we have to translate
and it's a
it into
tactile thing that releases
other mediums.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Now,
and I think
going back to the access, I really want to
go back
deep into the access.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what you were saying before about the access to
Time.
to people.
People.
And time, and having because it makes me then think of you like, you have to travel quite a way, or you have had to travel quite a way to have access to clients.
Yeah. And I get really so you probably see that I've just released some autumn minis. Because currently our valley is insanely beautiful, like insanely beautiful. And even where I take my dog for a walk, which is 5 minutes from my house, it is insanely beautiful. And at the moment we're getting some rain, so potentially there's going to be some snow on the mountains, and et cetera, et cetera. And because the community that I live in is relatively small, I do have essentially a restricted access to those who potentially might hire me. But I keep putting it out there, and I'm like, I'm here and I'm available, because at some point somebody from an hour away, hour and a half away might go, oh, well, actually, I'm going to travel. But it's definitely at the moment that that's my biggest frustration, is that I don't always have the ability. I mean, now I have an au pair, which is amazing. She's just started, but I don't always have the ability to make those journeys. And I do have to drive quite a long way to be able to create for the clients that potentially will hire me or do hire me. And yet my doorstep is unreal.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I'm sitting currently in that gap of, and this is what my dream over the next 6 to 12 months is, to build up a magnet within me, and pull people to here and pull people to me, whether it's to my studio, whether it's to this area, rather than trying to do it the other way around. And it's a real challenge, because the area that we're in, it's almost like there's a mental block. We're surrounded by mountains, Queenstown and Wanaka over the other side of the Linda's Pass, and there's this perception that we're just a really long way away. Which essentially we are, but it's really also only a couple of hours. So that's one thing that and there are a couple of businesses here that have that magnetism, which is really, really exciting. And I think if we pull together as not necessarily even as a collaboration, but, and that's why I want to create my book and my podcast, because I'm like, if I can create that access and that magnetism to here, then that, and that's the same with any, place that becomes somewhere like the destination, right? And it's that. So it's really honing in on what your access needs to be and how you need to formulate it to then be the best you can be, which is essentially what the whole triggers were with Christina on that series, because I was like, through their choices, through their desire to essentially do whatever they can to help raise awareness about the planet and about wildlife and about everything, she has created this magnetism of access by being in the right place, by creating the images she wants to create, to then, in all intents and purposes, to then be considered one of, the recipe of one of the best wildlife photographers in the world, which is awesome. But I think it's about breaking, for us as those of the kind of general populace of photographers, to say, okay, I can't, it's potentially damaging to me and my creativity to go, well, that's the best, and I can't be the best, and I can't even be anywhere near that because my work's not good enough. And it's not.
And I don't have access to National Geographic funds. Yeah,
exactly. But again, it's that choice and that compromise of or not well, there are compromises, but the choice. It's a little bit like when there are certain communities, whether it's the local photography club or whether it is a big group of photographers in America or whatever, is you make the choices to be part of it, to then be considered as part of it.
I think what you're trying to say is it's like you join these communities, or you join the club, or you whatever, to surround yourself with who you think are the best. It's so that you can be considered as part of that group or that collective and go, well, I'm putting myself in this space. I have access to these people. Like you were saying before, you've, got this goal image in your head that you want to make. You don't have the ability. Perhaps being in part of these communities or being surrounded by certain, photographers or people, you feel that will bridge the gap.
Yeah.
But I think also, we look at our own art sometimes and think it's actually better than it is.
Yeah.
And then we get upset, or we might feel a bit entitled that we didn't win an award, or maybe it wasn't that great.
I've been like that. I've been like that recently. It's funny you should say
honestly,
that.
You can get caught in your own head and think it's a little bit better than it is. And, it can be really disheartening. Like we definitely have touched on this before, because I was saying how I've entered competitions and I have zero Like, I zero chance of coming anywhere. But it was a great process of looking at my work through that lens
Mm.
and
Yeah.
going, actually, I know this isn't great enough to be considered.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, actually, interestingly enough, I think competitions and are really great for that in terms of because Instagram is where we place ourselves a lot of the time. And the playing field is so uneven, it's actually unimaginable how uneven the playing field is in that space in terms of what we're creating with, in terms of technology, what we are capable of, what we have access to, what we have instead of time, money, people, just the layers and layers and layers. You know, filmmakers you wouldn't compare yourself to, if you're starting out doing a family film, you wouldn't compare it to a blockbuster movie.
No.
But essentially, as photographers, that's what we're doing on bloody Instagram. Excuse my language. But that's exactly what we're doing. You know, somebody that's a home chef that's making beautiful cakes for the local women's group
CWA,
or something, you know, don't put their cake on a table next to one of the top pastry chefs in Paris.
No.
They don't do it. But with Instagram, that's what we're doing as photographers.
And
that's
it has
what has been created.
Yeah, and it has created an entitlement of thinking,
yes. Yeah.
I'm great.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually recently I'm right there with you. Recently I'm like, because as well, as a solo entrepreneur, solo business owner, creative, you have to blow your own trumpet.
Yeah.
And it can be icky and it can be sticky and it can be horrible and it can be weird. And, you know, and people can go and like, oh, you think a lot of yourself. And I'm like, I'm trying to make a living.
I'm making a living, whatever.
I'm trying to make a living and I'm trying to.
Your opinion doesn't feed my children.
And I'm trying to get hired. So yes, I will go, look at my image. Isn't it incredible? I can make more of these. I could even make them for you. So you end up having to, you know, blow yourself up, blow yourself up, blow yourself up. And then you kind of go, I have to believe that I am great and I can do this. And then you start believing it. And then you look out into the world and I'm the same. I'm like, I'm one of the best photographers in New Zealand. And actually recently I've had all of these like photographers come into my sphere in New Zealand. And I'm like, what was that thing? Like, look at this one. I was just in my bubble.
As I was thinking in the shower before we chatted, when we're creating our business, especially creatively, you know, through photography or art or whatever we're creating, we have to get to that.
Sorry, my cat's just meowing.
Like you were just saying, you have to believe in your work that much.
You do.
And you have to create your art and your business for you, because you need to be the one that is standing there confidently going, I can create this for you. I have created a business where I will charge you money to create this art for you. And the more we're ourselves, the more we create our art that is us, that does show what we can do, that does show, you know, the art that is important to us, the more we'll sort of magnetize our dream client, because they'll see the value in that, because it's all a perception thing. Like someone could look at your, your art and be like, oh. And then another person could look at it and be like, oh my God, how much can I pay you so that you can create that for me?
Yeah.
Like it's up to us to give access to the clients that will love us.
Yeah.
And we can only do that by creating the art that we're capable of, that we'll work on, that we'll keep being curious about, that will extend, we'll keep extending ourselves to get better and better and better. To be the best that we can be. We might not be like Christina and Paul, but to be the best that we can be.
Yeah.
To get the clients, we might not magnetize National Geographic, but we might magnetize to us the clients that adore and love our work.
Yeah.
So that our business is sustainable in all ways, financially, creatively. I mean, that's all we can do.
Yeah, 100%.
We have to be ourselves in our art.
Yeah. Sophie Lee, amazing photographer in Sydney, she said, you don't have to be the best photographer in the world. You have to be the best photographer in their world.
Exactly.
Blew my mind. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, that is exactly it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing as well. And to be honest, I mean, I don't really want to be the best wildlife photographer in the world, because Christina, though, in the program, she shared how she was taking photographs of a sea lion that had just been. Oh no, it wasn't her. It was Paul. But anyway, they put themselves in life-threatening danger, potentially. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing, is that it's a bit like getting to the top of Everest. Honestly, it's not actually. And I guess maybe it's sort of come across a little bit like I'm like, I want to be the best in the world, and I'm not. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying here. I'm just understanding how what we do enables us to do what we do, and access is like 90% part of it, I believe. And like you say, if again, I think we talked about this, I shared about this before, Glennon Doyle and Brené Brown were talking on a podcast. Oh, it was a while ago now. It must have been like years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago. Glennon was saying about, it's a bit like having your Instagram following and feeling like you need to reach everybody, and they need to be able to have access to you. And as you grow, as your followers grow, and as your those that you touch and those that you connect with grow, then how do you manage that? How do you keep your emotional and mental load down? Yeah. And she was explaining how she believes that, as long as you have consistent, strong, connected access to the smaller group, who really truly believe in you, who really invest in you, whether it's time, whether it's it doesn't always have to be money. It could be just even a little bit of headspace, and if those are strong, it's the connection. It's the connection. And then they talk about you in such an empowered way that ripple effect is what matters. Yeah. And as much as, and I think that's exactly what I'm kind of like trying to get at with this whole access thing, is sometimes we get so overwhelmed with us being that point of access to the, all of these places and all of these people, but actually we only really need access to the next, and then the next, and then next. And it's the same as, the next piece of business. We need to create that strong connection, and we need to create the access, build the connection, to that next bit, and then that will then ripple out. You know, and I actually do find I have a number of different people, and it's not always the same, is that they'll send me something through my Instagram, through my DMs, and they go, "Oh, the light was really beautiful. I took a picture and I thought of you." I'm like,
Aww.
that's kind of random, but also super cool.
Yeah.
Or they'll send me a picture of something blue, and they'll be like, you know, and I'm like, and that to me is success. That in some ways it's like, it's not that I want to infiltrate people's brains, which I do in a little weird sort of like Dr. Evil way. But if I can impart my vision and my love affair with light, my love affair with the color blue, my love affair with seeing and feeling and noticing,
Yeah.
if I can impart that into other people's minds and thoughts, then that to me is success, because firstly they get to enjoy and get to love on all of those things as well, but also they then also potentially then hire me. But not always, because most of them are over the other side of the world. So actually, you know,
it's still access. It's still that energy of generosity and sharing and connection, and we never know who they have access to. We never know, you know, when you can have access to that person.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of the same. I had an what's it called? A DM yesterday from someone, and she was like, because, you know, I'm always asking like why, and I always sort of, you know, talk about why and look at things deeper and why do you want to do that and blah blah blah. And she said something like, what did it say? She was like, oh, I was in a situation today and your voice came in and it was like, well, why? And she's like, and that made the whole difference to the choice I had to make. And I was like, so super proud. I was like, and because she went on to explain what the choice was, and just that one word, and that she's like, and that one, like she stopped and was like, oh, and why? And she's like, it changed stuff.
Yeah.
So that is to me success as well.
Yeah.
Just that change of thought. And it's kind of cool, but it's also like, is it weird that people have that like access? But I kind of love it, and it's like, that's the connection, and we're all so connected in so many ways. Yeah, it is a beautiful thing, but then it's also, I kind of come back to that access of, like you said, you have this core group, and that's who are your people, and then your message does filter out, and you do have access to more people, but you might not know it.
Yeah. And actually, just quickly, because I know we're sort of running out of time, but
we've run out of time. We're at 36 minutes.
All right. Yeah. But there's probably stuff that you're going to cut out, I think.
Yeah, there is. I'll let it go.
So on the almost negativity, not negativity of access, but let's just say the education of access. I received an email last week of somebody who I'd like to build a really good relationship with in terms of potential business. But they messaged me and they asked me about shoot locations and advice on various things. And because I am out there, because I share, because I'm open, because I'm generous, I think there was a almost like a misthought of, you know, this lovely lady. She was like, I'd really like your help. I need all of this, blah, 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 list it off. And it was that moment where my gut was like, sure, I've got access to these places. I know where they are. I totally am going to, you know, say, go here, go here, go here. But it was ultimately to feed it to another photographer.
That's what I was going to say. Was she giving that information to someone else?
It was to feed it to another photographer who was being paid.
Here's my price list.
Yeah, it was to be paid for a campaign that they're then going to shoot. And I think it's that, you know, and I had a really, and I chose in the end to have a conversation and just say, hey, look, this is actually not okay. You know, I'm more than happy to come on to your team and that's when I shared on my Instagram about being a fixer, because that's essentially what a fixer does. It's local knowledge that you pay for. And I was like, you know, I'm more than happy to help you and be part of and almost come as an advisory part of what you're doing. But if you're building a campaign and paying another photographer, that's part of their job. It's part of the time that they need to factor in. It's part of their understanding of the area. It's part of their understanding of light, of, you know, sourcing out all these things. And I'm like, that's why clients pay me what they pay me, because I do that. I did some work recently, and I was totally on my own. They were like, right, this is what we want you to shoot. You go off and do it. And I had to do all that work. And it's, you know, so, and I think that's another thing about this. The tricky part of access is, and now I have a studio. I have opened up that access. A number of people are now asking me what cameras to buy and that sort of thing. And I'm totally, again, happy to help. But yeah, so there is that, like you say, that opposite effect and that opposite. Yeah.
And I think, as we've touched on with Instagram, people think because they can send you a DM, they just automatically have access to you.
Yeah.
And your information and your knowledge and your business
and your time.
And your time.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I wouldn't say I'm time poor, but I'm time juggling at the moment. And I'm trying to make the right decision about each different thing that I need to do as and when I need to do it and within what time frame and all those sorts of things. And so that's when I get really
but I kind of think of it like, you know, like you were just saying, you can act as a consultant.
Yeah.
Like, people wouldn't walk into, say, an architecture firm or a lawyer firm or a big firm in the city for anything and go, I just needed to speak to someone just for a second I just need some information. Like, people wouldn't do that and expect it for free.
No.
But I think it's because people feel like they've got access to us on Instagram or feel like they know us because, as you share so much, it's acceptable to be like, which is, you know, I can just ask. Yeah. Whereas it's like, well, that is my business. I have created my business. I have done the research. I've done the work. I intimately know my area. I know the great spots. I can act as a consultant. I can be the photographer. I can, don't think you have instant access to me because I have an Instagram account.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that should be part of my title. Creative consultant.
Of course it should.
Yeah, of course it should. What are you even thinking, Chloe?
I've not even thought of that.
Right. Well,
we're at 41 minutes.
Good chat.
Great chat.
Really do let us know if any of that resonates with you.
You do have access to us. You can leave a comment.
Free to DM us. And have a great week. And we look forward to chatting next week. I think next week we're going to talk potentially about. What were we going to talk about? We were going to talk about.
What?
And next week, I think we're going to dig into a rather controversial one. And it is essentially leading nicely on from this. It's about the access to us and our knowledge and what we create for free.
Oh, yes. Yes, let's
Mm.
talk about that. Let's dig
Let's
into
talk
that.
about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. So it follows on from what we've been talking about today. Okay.
Okay.
I hope it rounded
In your
off at
feet.
some point. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Bye.
Bye.